Hi everyone, I'm Michelle.
Hi, I'm Tara.
Welcome back to Books and Beyond with Bound, Season 2, which is our quarantine edition. Before we tell you about our episode today, let me tell all of you that Tara's recent tweet has gone viral. She confessed that when she had pitched this podcast idea to a very popular producer in India, she was rejected. And now we are at 21,000 downloads. Tara, your reaction to rejection is commendable.
Oh, thank you, Michelle. We believed in this idea, so we wanted to go ahead no matter what. So, speaking about rejection, we spoke to a really interesting guest this episode, Parmesh Shahani, who is the author of the genre-bending book Queeristan. So, he actually mentioned that his pet peeve is when people play devil's advocate and sometimes reject your out-of-the-box idea. And I totally understand, because sometimes even I'm like, okay, is it really necessary to play devil's advocate here? So Parmesh has,
Absolutely.
So Parmesh has faced so many challenges because of his resilient attitude. And because of that, he has brought about change in the Indian workplace like no one else. And that's what the book discusses.
Yeah, and we found out how he wrote that. So Queeristan is a book which covers, the LGBTQ inclusion in the workplace, and he has done a really great job with, his work with Godrej Culture Lab. So we have never read a book like this before. It's a business book which has personal anecdotes, and it is so relatable. Like, I could really relate to so many references in the book, and I'm sure many readers will also be able to relate to the conversation in the episode, because he just throws Bollywood references like, it's an everyday thing. And that made it a lot of fun talking to him.
Yeah, Bollywood references in a business book was interesting and definitely made it relatable. And I also liked in the interview when he was like, when we were starting the podcast and we were explaining to him what it's about, and he said, I'm like Sri Devi, I do things in one shot. And I love that about him. I love the confidence. Hopefully you guys will enjoy the episode. It's full of, as Michelle said, interesting insights, a lot of his own personal stories, and how he wrote this business book. I'm sure anybody who's interested in these very relevant issues and also wants to know more about Parmesh's own life and business practices will love the book.
Welcome, Parmesh. Thank you so much for joining us on our podcast.
I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
So Parmesh, for our listeners who don't know much about your books, can you tell us a little bit about both of your books, please?
Sure. So the first one is called Gay Bombay, Globalization, Love and Belonging in Contemporary India. The original title was called Disco Jalebi. And, but of course, as a book, we thought Gay Bombay was a better title. And it came out in...
Oh, I love that title.
Disco Jalebi.
It's so exciting.
Yes. Yeah, but these days book titles also have to be like searchable as words. Yes. Sage also loved the title, but they said, is line mein books ko bechna bhi hai. So we went with the other title. And actually an updated version of it came out this June as well, which I'm very, very happy. So that is the first book, which was academic. And Queeristan it looks at LGBTQ inclusion in the Indian workplace. So that is part memoir, part manifesto, very much a business book, but it's many other things. It's a personal diary. I write about queer movies, TV, TikTok, parties, job fairs, India, abroad, my love life. I talk about, family and why it matters. So it's very much like a full-on Bollywood masala film with the central theme of inclusion, acceptance, the reasons why inclusion matters, steps that companies can take, but all surrounded with a whole lot of fun and masala.
So Parmesh, your book is a business book unlike anything I'd ever read. I'd never read a book, as you said, full of masala, your personal stories and all of those things. So why this format?
So I wrote the format because I wanted it to be read by different audiences. And I thought for both these audiences, straight as well as queer, but also business audiences as well as non-business audiences, right? Because I really thought that the book would resonate with a wide range of audiences. And I thought for all these multiple audiences, it's very important to have deeply personal stories. Because typically business books, as you indicated, right, tend to have a certain voice, a certain tone, and might not be the most exciting or fun reads. And I said that, I want this to be a very, very masaledar read. So this does have statistics, it does have numbers, it does have case studies. They're all wrapped up in incredible stories of people that I have met along the way, both LGBTQ as well as allies in the corporate world and outside the corporate world. My own personal, surreal life and journey. I wanted it to be an exciting, compelling business book. So, which is why I used the format that I did.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely wasn't boring. I could read it in almost one or two goes. Whereas in other business books, you have to take it, digest the information, then let it sit. So because you were working across formats, it really kept the narrative going. But I'm curious to know, when you presented this format to your editor, what was the reaction, and what are some of the reactions that you have been getting from the different audiences that you've pitched, that you want to pitch this book to?
What you are reading is like half of what the manuscript was, and so I'm glad that Kartika, Janani, the incredible Westland team, helped in chop and shape it. And then it was very much of why do does it need to be so personal? So a lot of our back and forth tussles were about that, right? So the way I use language, for example, right? I'll say yaar, are, chalo, I've written it very much like you're sitting next to me and we're having a conversation. She's like, is that too jarring for a business book, right? So ultimately, it was a very rewarding experience of both of us taking a leap of faith. As Simmi, aunty says in Indian Matchmaking, it's all about adjustment and compromise. Any good relationship. So certainly an editor-author relationship so is very much about adjustment and compromise. And I think like a good marriage in this case, I think it worked.
It definitely worked, Parmesh. So for me, the personal stories really worked because I don't really read much of nonfiction, but that was exactly what I was looking for in your book. And so we wanted to know what kind of incidents, did you pick? Like out of all the incidents that have happened, how did you choose certain incidents to include it in the book, and why?
Again, very outcome driven. I was very clear right from the beginning that this is a book about advocacy. I have written it to change people's hearts and minds. Present through the book almost a watertight case, although now we have to ask, should one be making a case at all for something that should be so obvious that LGBTQ inclusion is important and vital and necessary and useful and profitable?
Throughout the book, when I was reading it, and it was so interesting, but I had the exact same thought. I was like, why do we need to make this case? It's so obvious.
Yeah. So correct, right? So even I felt that, but then I said we live in a world where we need to make these cases because it's not an equal. So every story that is in the book, every number which is in the book, every incident from my own life that I've chosen to share in the book is with that outcome in mind. I want people reading this to be moved. I want them to be moved at a mind level, but also the stories. When Mohul, who is a trans man at Lalit, when the Lalit pays for Mohul's gender affirmation surgery and ensures Mohul that the organization is behind Mohul, come what may. What that does not only to Mohul and his professional success, but also what that does in terms of the ecosystem Mohul has created at home, right? So I wanted all these stories to come through, right? My own story, right? Of what it means to be at a Godrej when your company embraces you and helps you flourish. So many incredibly moving stories of individuals, activists, community organizations. So I really wanted to show all these stories, share all these positive stories, and take the reader on this journey to make the reader understand that, there is so much happening on the ground in contemporary India.
All these names, all these examples that you have put into the book, I mean, they are unforgettable, in their own way. I think everyone is a star. And that's what I loved about your book. I was just telling Tara after I read your book that even though it's a non-fiction book, these characters come alive in such a way that, like it's fiction, like in fiction, how characters really come alive on the page. You've done that very well in the book. And I've also worked in HR. So, I really understand that it's very important to create an inclusive atmosphere for your employees. And I was really curious, Parmesh, so if, you're trying to convey the same knowledge to an audience who are not readers, how do you think such an audience would get access to such stories?
I've done it by recording the audible version of the book.
Wow.
that's
No.
that's great. Just like this podcast.
Yes, shameless plug, Audible, I love you. Audible also gives more royalty, by the way, for anyone who's listening. It's more than print. So any author who's listening, please do audiobook. You will get more. Huh. How do we reach out? I do whatever it takes. As one of my icons, Rakhi Sawant says, and I quote, "Jo dikhta hai, wo bikta hai." So I do whatever it takes to go out there and get the message across, right? So for people who don't read, I give talks. I talk to any organization that wants to hear. But I think media is really, really important in this as well. So whether it's podcasts like yours, I think it's very important that now we have so many films, TV series, other books, web series that talk about, a wide range of queer lives and experiences, right? And these are not just in English or Hindi, but in languages like Kannada or Marathi. So I think it's very important that one can share these. So for anyone who doesn't want to read, I mean, buy audiobooks is my first recommendation. But number two, it's all around you. I mean, there's so much now happening in our country that you can access to learn more about queer lives, queer dreams, queer aspirations. So just go out and engage with the content. It's there.
But coming back to your book, we read about you use two terms, jugaad resistance and cultural acupuncture, which is very, very different. I hadn't heard something like this before. So could you explain to our listeners, what do these terms mean?
Yeah, so jugaad resistance is, I've written about the kind of work I do at Godrej, which is where you kind of locate yourself within the institution or within the firm. So if you're in the government, if you're in a corporation, if you're in a school, if you're in a college, right? My thing is you can figure out how you can use your own place in the system to bring about change, right? So if you're in a college, you can start an LGBTQ association, right? If you're in the corporate world, you can bring about change in so many ways, whether it's in changing policies, sensitizing your co-workers, hiring more queer people and so on. LGBTQ rights is something that I care about, and which is what this book is about. But you may care about the environment, you may care about climate change, you may care about Black Lives Matter, you may care about the anti-caste movement in our country, or you may care about issues that are at the intersection of many of these things, right? Cultural acupuncture is a term that I've, borrowed from the Harry Potter Alliance, and I write about this in the book. And how in the Harry Potter Alliance, Andrew Slack uses the term in very particular ways to talk about how there are so many fans and activists around the world who use the Harry Potter universe framework to help imagine and then create changes in the real world.
I love that part because Shed and I are Harry Potter fans.
Yes.
But I've kind of use the word in a slightly different sense. I use the word to kind of talk about the various cultural experiments that I have been doing over the past decade, from both within Godrej as well as outside, using the Godrej vantage point to bring about the different kinds of changes, right? So within Godrej, whether it is, in pushing for change in HR policies, or doing the kind of programming that we did through the Culture Lab, ensuring that the organization, supports queer festivals, and outside Godrej as well by, pushing Godrej to join alliances, collaborate with organizations like the UN to host standard releases, inspire other companies and share our policies and practices with them. So to me, culture acupuncture is knowing what to press and where to bring about the change that you want to bring about in society.
Yeah, your work with the Godrej Lab is so fascinating, Parmesh. We just love how you engage with culture, art, cinema, everything, So we wanted to know, when it comes to literature, who are, the biggest influences on your writing, and which books have helped you see literature differently?
Oh God, I mean, I am the biggest... I'm a big fan of Vikram Seth. So I think Vikram Seth really changed my life. Just the language beauty of Vikram's language. So, so everything from Rushdie to Seth to recent incredible voices like Nisha Susan, who, if you not read her new collection of short stories, you really should. I read randomly, I read voraciously. So my reading is diverse. It spans fiction and non-fiction. It spans what might be considered highbrow and, middle brow or popular. It spans comics, graphic novels, magazines. I also love magazines. I love pulp. I think off late, the real magic of reading, I think, even in Indian writing, is in translations, and it's in the range of different voices which are coming up. So, or whether it's a Cobalt Blue, which is extraordinary that Sachin Kundalkar wrote in Marathi, but Jerry Pinto translated, or like voices like that of Revathi, who wrote A Life in Trans Activism, or the range of voices that Amaya Sharma chronicles in her nonfiction book. So I think it's very, very important that, and what's exciting right now are the range of voices that are coming out across all over the country from different regions, either through translation or writers sharing different experiences beyond, say, urban or the main big city India experiences.
Actually, I remembered a brilliant book which I read recently. It's a queer narrative written by Hansda Sawendra Shekhar. My Father's Garden. I really liked that book. And I think that now, even in Indian fiction, a lot of stories are coming across as authentic. Earlier, of course, we know that these tales would not be, maybe they would not be published. I don't know, maybe it's the gatekeeping. But now I'm happy that finally stories are coming out into the open.
Yeah, in fact, I have an excerpt from Hansda's book in the second last chapter of Queeristan, where I talk about some of this queer writing. Yeah, it's extraordinary.
Hearing you speak about all of this brought a smile to my face. And I think it's so important to read across genres, read, as you said, highbrow, middlebrow, whatever we want to call it, because it just opens up your mind and it exactly transports you to different worlds. So coming back to your writing space, obviously you have a very busy job, you're involved in advocacy. So how do you manage your time, and when did you actually do the writing for both your books?
Queeristan I've written around my life, wherever, whenever, between work, around work, often at work. I wrote Queeristan in a year in which I was traveling a lot. So a lot of it was written in hotel rooms, on the road. A lot of it was looking at old columns or looking at things that I'd written and kept stored away and bringing it back and seeing how it can kind of weave in and out of the narrative that I was trying to create. It was constructed very much with great intent. So if you see my original plans for Queeristan, it is very much an Excel sheet. But I like to visualize. So I like to draw out the entire book and look at it in front of me, in rows and columns. And I kind of like to see that flow. The editing process is also different because Queeristan is written as a book where the chapters are very it flows, but also there are parts of the book where, especially the first 10 chapters, and you can replace any chapter in any order and it still stands.
Yeah, no, definitely. We love the structure of the book. And I was just thinking about, how you used Excel sheets to, work around your plot, because that is something that I recommend to writers as well, in my online classes. And then the writers say that they have never seen their work in that way, because when you look at it in a Word document, it's very different that from, when you see it in an Excel sheet. So I'm really glad that, that's actually your process.
Yeah, that's interesting. Let's not underestimate the power of Excel.
Yeah. Or just organizing. And I think maybe it's different for fiction, and I've not written fiction, so I don't know. This romantic idea of sitting with a pen and paper and seeing what flows. And then with my publishers, it was about changing a bunch of things. So what is actually now the prologue in the book as of now is actually chapter 3 when I submitted the manuscript. So it's decisions like that, which I thought were very exciting.
It's so interesting to see, how much work goes behind a book. And there's years and years and reshuffling as an editor. I see some of that. So it's super fascinating that you shared all of this. And I also really like that you sort of included manuals. So, whether it's terminology or rules. So we were wondering, what are some of the weirdest, most bizarre myths that you have tried to bust in this book?
I don't know, but I keep on getting asked all these questions all the time, right? I talk to other companies all the time about why they should be inclusive. And people ask such strange things. People will say, like, for example, if you say, now most progressive companies in India offer gender affirmation surgery as a standard benefit to employees, right? So many companies do it, which means that if any employee joins you and wants to transition to another gender, your company's health policies pay for it. So you up to the same amount of insurance that you offer any other employee. So this is nothing extra. And what the companies, most progressive companies in India do in extra is give an additional maybe 60,000 rupees per annum, etc. for hormones, because that is an ongoing expenditure. If anyone's listening and your company doesn't offer this, please ask for it. So over there, like so many people, when I will say, oh, what if so many trans people join us just so that they can do this gender affirmation surgery?
Oh my God.
Now,
seriously.
Yeah. And then I have to tell them, this is very, first of all, it's really good if so many trans people join you. So you should feel very proud. If a lot of people want to go for gender affirmation surgery, then that's good. But I think what you will find mostly is that it's not like tomorrow you decide and, day after you do the surgery. These things take time. You need to go through counseling. You need to go through evaluation. There's an entire process that you go through before you decide to affirm your gender. You have to explain to people that this is not something that is that people do on a whim. So I can say, well, how about framing it in this way? Tomorrow, if you are saying that my company offers 6-month maternity leave, which actually right now is mandatory, will you then say, what if so many women join me just so that they can take the 6 months maternity benefits and become pregnant? No, no.
That's a good one. Yes.
Because that's kind of silly, right? But people don't understand. Yeah. So you have to explain lovingly that, this is something that you offer women because, women go through maternity. No one will join you just to claim these benefits. And I do it with love and humor.
I think this kind of education is required because some people just don't see it for what it is. And, so we were curious, both of your books offer a very, very good insight into the whole LGBTQ movement. So we wanted to know, what are your thoughts about queer narratives written by people who are not queer?
Of course, it's very important to have queer narratives written by queer people. But I'm very okay with queer non-queer people writing queer narratives. I'm okay with queer people writing non-queer narratives. I think as long as there is research done, there is sensitivity, there is, a genuine attempt to engage and understand, I'm okay. What I want to see are more and more diverse narratives. Does it make an impact if queer people rewrite our own stories? Certainly. And, do I want to see more and more queer people writing our own stories? For sure. Do I want to see infrastructures of possibility that make that happen? Certainly. If you see that in popular media as well. So if you see an Aligarh, for example, right, it's such a powerful story because Apurva Asrani, who wrote it, is queer himself. If you see Ek Ladki Ko Dekha To Aisa Laga, it's such a moving story because Ghazal Dhaliwal, the scriptwriter, is queer, right? So when we queer people tell our own stories in whichever format, I think, we tell diverse stories, we tell a range of stories. So I would like to see more and more of that. But I don't want to stop anyone in that sense. I think everyone should write about everything. Like I'm seriously considering writing my next book about straight people. And I hope straight people don't say that, I shouldn't write about them.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. I think I want to call it Straightistan. Nice. I think really, I want to look at straight people in, the straight country. I would imagine it. Oh, wait, we're living in it.
Are there any plans for you to write fiction?
I don't know. I mean, I think our real world is so much more surreal than anything I could conjure up. Just look all around you. So I don't know I don't know what fiction I would or could write. Have I thought about it? Yes. Will I do it? I don't know. I think I'm just about getting the hang of and really enjoying nonfiction.
So why don't we discuss the titles in the book, Parmesh? They were really interesting. So, what was the thought process behind it, and why those titles?
So the titles were funny, were meaningful, were calls to action, right? So there's a whole chapter called "But No Token Rainbows, Please, We Want Jobs, Not Your Instagram Filters," right? So even the titles are like conversations and calls to actions. The prologue is "If the BBC says I'm gay, it must be true," which is from a part of my own life.
Yes, that was one of my favorite titles out of all.
And likewise, the cover design, the cover which Gavin Morris did, who at this point, my favorite cover designer in the world, which is kind of like a refracted rainbow, right? Like, you refract the rainbow into even more colors. And it kind of wraps around in a 3D way. And the word Queeristan is big and bold and in your face. And we did that with great intent, because the original plan was, of course, that the book will release in a world in which there was no pandemic. And considering it's Westland Business's first book, the plan was really to be out there, to be at airport bookstores, to be, hopefully on hoardings, to be out there with this big fat Queeristan font in your face, saying that LGBTQ inclusion in the Indian workplace. So if you read the book or you don't, the message you get is, we are here, we are queer, we are in your face. And so the idea is to, to not just think about text and subtext, but as a creator to think about all these things. And with this book, I, along with Westland, have really thought about all these things, right? What do we want to say with the book? What is beneath the surface, right? On the surface, it's a business book. But beneath the subtext of the book is intersectionality, is imagining a better world altogether, is solidarity. And paratext, which is all the conversations that we're having around the book, are also with great intent to change people's minds and move them towards action. I really enjoyed writing, but I must say, I really enjoyed designing and being part of the project around designing all these various elements of the book. It's really, really given me a high.
Yeah, messaging and packaging is something that, at Bound, we always think about, because all of these things really do matter. So it's really interesting the way that you guys thought about the entire thing. So our last question is, obviously we can't ignore the pandemic. And so, how would you translate some of the tips or the things that you've written about in your book to this sort of new workplace environment, work from home, and something that we are going to be facing for the foreseeable future?
Pre-pandemic, this book would have been like a sweet book to read or a nice thing, or for anyone in HR or anyone in business, who's interested. It might have been the cherry on the cake. But I think now, post-COVID, this book is the cake. Because one has to realize that, the pandemic has changed our world fundamentally. And, organizations are going to have to evolve to stay relevant and actually, quite honestly, to stay alive. And, I'm talking about LGBTQ, but there are other dimensions of inclusion, right? People with disabilities, PWD, caste, age, regional. There's so many other dimensions of inclusion that organizations need to be thinking of. Can we have organizations in which we have 50% women, for example? Including at senior levels of leadership.
It was just a couple of days back that I read this article on Scroll, written by Deepak Unnikrishnan. He's a really talented writer. And he mentioned that until now, he had never revealed to anybody about his hearing problem, but now that he had to take classes online, he actually had to reveal that. And he said it was really difficult to do that because, we, people who are able to, we can record online, we can do things, we can work from home, but it's very tough for people who can't. So that was a big eye opener. And I absolutely agree with you, Parmesh, that now it is vital. And if now we don't do that, it's just, workplaces are not going to survive.
And the ones that do are going to thrive.
So, Parmesh, now it's the fun section of the podcast, and you are a really fun person to talk to. So, we really hope you enjoy this rapid fire round.
Is there a hamper? Is it going to be big?
Yes, we will. Yes, we do. We do have, a Books and Beyond with Bound hamper.
Does it have dark chocolate?
No, okay. What kind of dark chocolate? What kind of dark chocolate do you like?
Well, anything that's more than 75% dark.
Oh, wow. Okay, I think, Tara, what about you? What is your favorite chocolate like? I love Ferrero Rocher.
I like everything to do with, I like chocolate, I like candy, I like every single,
Wow.
I like all
Sweet
No.
tooth.
I
Tara
don't
is a
like
sweet
sweet.
tooth.
No. I like my men, my coffee, and my chocolate dark.
like that.
Wow, nice line. Nice line. Okay. That one book you absolutely hate.
I don't hate books. I love. I can't hate books. I don't hate books. I can't.
Okay.
I can't.
That
Well, I'm so diplomatic. I'm not going to win a hamper. Oh no. Okay, next.
no. Okay, there's one book that you feel is underrated.
Beyond the Beautiful Forevers, the Catherine book. I love it so much.
I like that book, yeah. What is your pet peeve?
My pet peeve is people saying, let me play devil's advocate for a moment and then derailing the progressive idea I presented to them. I just want them to stop.
I feel that, yeah,
Yes,
that is annoying.
So fashion or travel?
Both. God, I miss both.
No, but you have to pick one. You have to pick one.
Travel. Because I'm just super stylish already. I don't need to be fashionable. I'm just inherently stylish. So I'll just travel with my inherently stylish self.
Okay, so culture lab or books?
Both. I mean, it's like I can't choose. Both. Yeah.
Queer literature or queer cinema?
Right now, I think queer literature is incredible. I think queer cinema is getting there. But, in India, queer literature, for sure.
Okay, and the last question. Your top 3 pandemic reads.
Oh, my top 3 pandemic reads. Anisha Susan's, the women who invented Facebook and other stories, great short stories. Mikhail Bass, Muscular India, incredible nonfiction. And I would say, I've really enjoyed reading all of Sharanya Manivanan's poetry. There's something just so soothing about Sharanya's work, Sharanya's poetry, Sharanya's, fantasy.
Her prose.
Yeah, well, her prose as well. But I would say anything about Sharanya because I just read it and I can measure it because I have an oximeter. And I just go down 20 points after reading one page. It's just soothing.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Her writing is powerful. Thank you so much for speaking to us, Parmesh. I mean, we could talk to you for hours and hours. It's just so much fun from Bollywood to, literature to fashion to everything. I mean, it was, I think, one of the most fun conversations we had. So thank you so much, Parmesh. It was a delight to talk to you during the pandemic, especially.
Yes, thank you so much, Parmesh.
And keep up the great work that y'all are doing. I'm such a fan and thank you for calling me.
Tara, I wish that conversation lasted longer. I really didn't want it to stop. He is so much fun.
Yeah, really. And I can't wait for our next episode where we're going to be speaking to one of our favorite authors, both Michelle and I, favorite authors, Riya Mukherjee, who's the author of The Body Myth. So this is a landmark book in India because it covers mental health, polyamory, among other topics. So we spoke to Riya about, how one writes, what one doesn't know, and many other things. And she's also been a mentor at Bounce Retreats, so it's especially special for us. And she's been Michelle's mentor for a very long time. And the episode is releasing on Michelle's birthday. So Michelle, how did it feel to record with her?
I don't know, Tara. It's like a dream come true. I still can't believe it. And it's a very special moment for me because you and Riya have been the biggest cheerleaders in my journey, and it's very, very important when you're going on a creative path because it's highly unpredictable. But thank you so much for the support.
My pleasure. And as Riya said, we wish you the best of luck in getting your book.
Thank you, Tara.
So tune in next time to find out what Riya does and how she manages to do so much.
So as always, we're looking for book recommendations. We are on Instagram at Bound Podcast. Please do send in your feedback and let us know what you're reading right now.
And also, if you guys are looking for online classes about writing, that is Bound's specialty. So do check us out on www.boundindia.com and look at our online classes. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us.